So everybody that has to sit exams, be they your GCSEs or your driving test or giving scary presentations at work, everyone that has to do those sorts of exams, they get some level of exam anxiety. Um, Maybe don't even realize that it's the case. And actually, a lot of the time, it can be really helpful because a little bit of stress and concern for the outcome of your performance can be really motivating in helping you to put the work in to prepare for it. But it becomes a problem if it stops them from being able to do the thing that they need to do because of the physical and psychological overwhelm, or if it makes them unwell before or after sitting their exams. I know some students actually do get sick because of anxiety, and then they can't actually sit the exams because they're so anxious about sitting the exams. Obviously, when anxiety gets to that high of a level, it becomes a real problem, like a significant problem, that needs to be dealt with in ways other than um, this is saying this is great. I'm super motivated because I'm terrified of failure. You know that there's more to it than a bit of stress and hard work getting back out of it. Um, so I've experienced it myself, and on one occasion, I actually remember standing outside of the exam hall, feeling like I was going to pass out, and I didn't know what it was at the time, and it was very scary. Obviously, I've since learned about the physiology and the psychology of anxiety and how to manage it so that it doesn't have such an impact. And these days, I don't really have to sit exams, which definitely helps. Um, I would firstly say that if students do feel real physical symptoms of anxiety, so that can be that they get headaches or digestive problems frequently, dizziness, nausea, um, feelings um, of panic for no noticeable reason, just general feelings of like dread or something bad is going to happen, feeling headaches, overthinking, not being able to sleep. All of those things can be associated with anxiety and can be quite problematic. And I would recommend a visit to the GP because they can be prescribed medication or talking therapies that really make a difference in managing anxiety. And it comes in different forms. So it might not just be associated with exams. You could have generalized anxiety, and in your exam year, exam performance is a thing that you pin it onto. So it's worth if anxiety is a long-term problem, it's worth having a visit to the doctor. Outside of that, there are things that you can do. So even if you have been to the doctor and you are on medication, you might still have a problem with exam anxiety for exams this year. But there are things that you can do to help to reduce that. And perhaps your anxiety isn't that bad, but it is still a problem for the exams. So there are things that you can do. So the first thing is to understand how your anxiety leads to all of those physical symptoms and those things that are complete blanking out of your brain in the exam so that you can't remember anything that you've ever learned. And what you do in the exam is not a reflection of what you're able to do outside of the exam. So what happens is that we're in this situation that triggers anxiety, such as the exam. And to your brain, that's the same as being approached by a zombie or whatever you're scared of, rabid dog, a fire, whatever it is that scares you. So you're in a situation that triggers anxiety, a spider, if you're me. So that can create this feedback loop in your brain, scary situation, run away, that then increases the anxiety each time you avoid the situation that causes it. What I mean by that is that when your brain wants to protect you from things that make you feel bad or anxious because they might be dangerous, you'll have these negative emotions, and then you'll have the urge or the thought that you are going to fail. You'll have the desire to avoid that situation or find some sort of soothing behavior to make you feel better, whatever that might be. All sorts of different things, either avoid the situation or go and do something fun, run, shout at somebody, eat a bar of chocolate, whatever it is that makes you feel better in that moment. So if we felt in response to an anxiety trigger, maybe we feel nervous and we think something bad is going to happen, that being the exam, the exam is tomorrow and we're feeling really nervous and that we're going to fail, and then not be able to do whatever the big goal is that you had for yourself. And then you'll panic, so the blood comes out of your brain into your limbs because you're preparing to be able to run away or deal with this problem. Your heart rate might increase, so then you get palpitations. You can feel your heart beating in your chest. You might start to sweat. Blood leaves your stomach as well, so you might get cramps, feel sick, start to feel dizzy. Obviously, that's horrible. And then that might mean that the next day you don't go into school because you're feeling so sick and you avoided the exam. So the problem's gone. Now you're safe, but you haven't actually dealt with it. You haven't sat the exam. And you probably would, like most people, probably beat themselves up over the fact that they weren't able to deal with that. They're picturing everybody else going in and sitting the exam and them stuck at home. Lots of negative self-talk, denting their confidence. So the next time they have to sit an exam, they've not only got the fear that they had of the exam, but they're also thinking, well, last time I wasn't able to do this. This is going to happen again. So there's even more anxiety associated with it and even more conviction that this is going to end with failure. So it creates this feedback loop that this situation that causes us anxiety just keeps causing us more and more anxiety and it doesn't go away. So how you can counter that is basically by trying to do the reverse. And I don't mean just drop yourself right in the middle of the lion's den and do the thing that terrifies you, because that not only is that like way too scary to do, it doesn't actually help avoid the situation where you can't actually do the exam because your brain blanks out. What I mean is that you kind of build up to it by exposing yourself to these anxiety inducing things over time. So if the big terrifying thing is sitting your GCSEs, what is a little bit less terrifying than that? And take a step back each time of the different things that you could do that are like that or helping towards that, but not quite as terrifying, until you get to a step that you're actually comfortable trying today. And I don't mean like, yeah, that's fine, I'm not bothered. I mean, it's a bit scary, but I can probably do it, or perhaps I can do it with a bit of help. So that might be, so if your thing that you're scared of is sitting your GCSE exam paper, you could sit some practice papers at home because that's not scary. If nobody's going to look at it, that's not so scary. You might not like sitting the paper and it might still trigger those feelings that you get of exam anxiety. But if nobody's going to mark it and nobody can see what you did and it's not actually the final exam, that's less scary. And then you could try doing it again, but actually having somebody mark it. Another thing that people find very scary, but that is actually helpful in preparing for the exams, is answering questions in the class, because it's a similar sort of fear of not doing as well as everybody else that stops people from answering those questions in the class. Maybe even just going into the exam hall if you're able to, and being in that environment and facing the anxiety that it triggers, or doing work at home and timing yourself to see if you can do it in the hour and a half, because having the clock can be additional pressure as well. So all of these things that you can do outside of the actual exam, where the stakes are, where the pressure is, will help you to prepare for the final thing that you have to do. Less pressure and building that confidence that you can deal with it over time. So you're essentially doing something a little bit scary enough to still trigger some of that heart palpitations and sweating, but without it actually making you dizzy and sick and going blank. So you can still take that next step. That shows you what you can do. So you've got that conscious feeling of confidence because you've got actual physical evidence of what you can do because you did it. But that subconscious bit that's always telling you you can't do it, avoid it, run away, is also getting more able to deal with this situation, because the anxiety never gets to a point where it massively peaks. It gets just manageable enough, and then you deal with it and it goes away. And then it's the next situation doesn't spike quite as high as it would have if you hadn't had that win. I hope that makes sense. And if that's something that you experience, so if your child has this exam anxiety, if they have these physical feelings of illness in response to exam anxiety, or when they get into the exam, they go completely blank, I can't remember of anything that they did. Or perhaps they aren't even aware of an anxiety situation in exams, but their classwork and their exam performance doesn't match up. These sorts of things can help with that. Not everybody is even aware of the fact that they have anxiety. I wasn't when I was experiencing exam anxiety because I didn't necessarily know what it was. Especially as a teenager, you quite frequently would have illness and things that are just kind of part and parcel, and you just ignore them. So they might not even be aware of the fact that they have anxiety in these situations and that this is a thing for them. So it's worth having a go at seeing if these things trigger something for them and if you can work on that over time so that they do actually manage to give their best performance in the exam room.